Coming up on a newscast, People Power Party admits it's in the midst of an internal crisis, with the ruling bloc's chairman suspended and the acting chair stepping down. The PPP may adopt an emergency leadership system. President Yoon, meanwhile, is taking a break but will map out plans for state affairs. Seoul's defense chief emphasized the need to normalize an intel sharing pact with Japan. The minister also highlights the importance of tighter security cooperation in Washington and Tokyo, as well as strengthening reaction capabilities against North Korean threats. U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi begins a tour of Asia. First stop, Singapore. Other countries to visit for high-level talks include Malaysia, Japan, and South Korea. Hello, your week's off to a smooth start. I'm Daniel Che. Let's begin with our top story. South Korea's ruling party admitted that it's in the midst of an internal crisis. The acting chair is stepping down. Support is growing for the PPP to adopt an emergency leadership system. Our Lee Kyung-eun starts us off.
South Korea's ruling People Power Party is seemingly on course to launch a new interim leadership to pick up the slack resulting from its leadership crisis. It held a general meeting on Monday, and all of the attending members, except for one, agreed that the party is in the midst of emergency and it should act accordingly.
We discussed the party rule that enables us to switch to an emergency steering committee system in case an emergency occurs.
Under party rules, an emergency largely means when the chair position is vacant or when the Spring Council, which holds decision-making rights, can no longer function. Recently, the party has seen its chairman Lee Jun-suk suspended over a sexual bribery scandal. But since it technically still holds its position, the party can only declare emergency when its Spring Council is unable to function. In fact, the party is getting closer to that state due to a series of party leaders stepping down. Though several members do still remain, most party members agree that the current situation is urgent enough to be called as emergency.
2 out of the 5 decision-making members resigned, and the chairman is currently in something of an emergency situation. Lawmakers largely come to agreement that the party is currently unable to make decisions properly.
Through the new leadership, the party is looking to resolve the latest setbacks, including the suspension of the chairman and controversy surrounding the full leader, including the leakage of his message between him and President Yoon. The party is set to call for a national committee meeting, which has the ultimate right to approve the launching of an emergency steering committee system. The key will be persuading the head, who has so far expressed concerns over the plan. Lee Kyung-eun, Arirang News.
President Yoon is taking a summer break this week. He plans to map out plans for state affairs during that time. According to sources, the break since taking office in May will be a chance for the South Korean leader to refresh and recharge energy levels. He is likely to stay in the capital during the break. The president could visit local markets to meet the public. So far, details haven't been released due to security reasons. South Korea's defense chief seeks to get the military intel sharing pact with Japan back on track. For the past 5 years, GSOMIA has been considered underutilized because of bilateral issues that remain unresolved. Pelosi shares with us his remarks.
Seoul's defense minister Lee Jong-suk called for a normalization of an agreement known as GSOMIA that enables South Korea and Japan to share military information. He said the government will undertake a comprehensive review to find the right time to do that. When asked about the issue by an opposition party lawmaker during a parliamentary session on Monday.
We aim to normalize GSOMIA, but at the right time, as we check up on relations between South Korea and Japan.
He also vowed to respond sternly in case of direct nuclear and missile threats from North Korea. His remarks come as Seoul seeks to tighten the security cooperation with Washington and Tokyo amid growing nuclear and missile threats from Pyongyang. GSOMIA enables South Korea and Japan to share information about North Korea's military and nuclear activities directly with each other, without going through their mutual ally, the U.S. The pact is widely considered to have been underutilized since 2019 because of unresolved issues regarding trade and wartime forced labor. Former presidential candidate Lee Jae-myung, who now represents Incheon's Gaeangbi district, took part in the session for the first time.
Diplomatic and security issues should not be brought into the political arena. I will also work to ensure we are never a country that surrenders or is forced to give up sovereignty.
Regarding North Korea, Lee Jae-myung stressed the importance of peace and the country's strong defense capabilities. 배은지, Arirang News.
South Korea, the United States, and Japan are kicking off a combined ballistic missile defense exercise in waters off Hawaii to coordinate against Pyongyang's military threats. Dubbed Pacific Dragon, it runs through August 14th. Australia and Canada are also taking part. With 8 warships and 2 aircraft, the drills are aimed at enhancing cooperation when it comes to detecting, tracking, and reporting ballistic missile targets. Pacific Dragon was arranged by the defense chiefs of the 3 nations back in June. The nation's top diplomat reiterated that Seoul will take part in strengthening the U.S.-led alliance in semiconductors. However, the minister emphasized it is not going to exclude a certain country in the process. Kim Da-mi has the details.
South Korea is going to go ahead with its participation in the U.S.-led semiconductor and supply chain cooperation framework, but only in a way that does not ostracize a certain country. Seoul's Foreign Minister Park Jin was talking about the so-called Fab 4 in a plenary session Monday of the Foreign Affairs and Unification Committee of the National Assembly.
The U.S. proposal is focused on industry and does not target or exclude China. The U.S. also understands that Korea has close economic ties with China.
Park was referencing the widely held idea that the Chip Alliance is yet another way for the U.S. to keep China in check through an alliance in the semiconductor field between participating countries like Japan and Taiwan. Seoul's top diplomat then reiterated that he will do his best to ensure that Beijing does not misunderstand the purpose of the pact. That's also in line, he said, with Seoul's participation in the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, better known as IPEF. South Korea's foreign ministry made sure to underline that Seoul will continue to communicate with non-participating nations, including China, based on the principles of inclusiveness, openness, and transparency. Also on Monday, Unification Minister Kwon Young-se reiterated that South Korea's 2019 decision to repatriate 2 North Korean fishermen against their will was clearly wrong. To prevent the recurrence of similar cases in the future, Kwon said he plans to suggest to President Yoon Suk-yeol that Seoul consider a policy of accepting all North Korean defectors. Kim Da-mi, Arirang News.
U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi kicked off her Asia trip. First, a 2-day visit to Singapore, where she'll meet President Halima Yacob to discuss a number of issues ranging from economic development to tackling climate change. Pelosi is also set to visit other Indo-Pacific countries like Malaysia, Japan, and South Korea to hold high-level meetings. But it's not confirmed if a stopover in Taiwan is planned. According to CNN, government officials from the 2 sides said Pelosi has decided to visit Taiwan, but when exactly she'll land in Taipei hasn't been reported. China has repeatedly warned against such a move and vowed to take resolute measures against the states. The issue of whether Taiwan is autonomous is one of the most sensitive yet core issues in Washington-Beijing relations. The nation's daily COVID-19 tally continues to rise. To deal with this resurgence, a few changes to the virus prevention measures are being implemented. Song Yoo-jin outlines what they are.
South Korea's COVID-19 tallies continue to climb. The country logged 44,689 new infections on Monday, the highest figure reported on a Monday in almost 4 months. At the same time, the number of critically ill patients hit a 2-month high at 287. To effectively deal with the growing case numbers, high-risk groups infected with COVID-19, which include people aged 60 and above and those with weakened immune systems, will no longer get checkup calls when self-isolating at home. Instead, they're advised to get treated at hospitals and clinics if they need medical attention. Health authorities made this decision now that more facilities are equipped to provide swift treatment. Still, the 24-hour hotlines will continue to operate so that patients can reach out when their symptoms become more severe. Also from Monday, second booster shots will be rolled out to those who've made reservations beforehand. For the past 2 weeks, the only way to get the shots was with leftover vaccines. And with more people lining up to get tested, temporary COVID-19 screening clinics are reopening across the country. In the capital Seoul, all clinics located in its 25 autonomous districts started operations last week. They provide PCR tests to people who've tested positive in a rapid antigen test, those aged 60 or above, or anyone who's been in close contact with a confirmed case. Health officials are also working to find hidden or asymptomatic patients to prevent further spread of the virus by making testing more affordable. From Tuesday, those who've been in close contact with a confirmed case can get a rapid antigen test at a clinic for only 5,000 Korean won, or around $3.8 US, even if they do not have symptoms. Currently, it costs about 10 times more than that. 송유진, Arirang News.
Staying here in Korea, first-time home buyers can now borrow up to 80% of the home's value. In Seoul and other overheated markets, the limit had been 40%. This was a pledge of the Yoon administration. Home buyers can borrow as much as 600 million won, which is around $500,000. The new loan-to-value limit applies regardless of location and is expected to help young buyers get on the property ladder. Another new measure gives people buying a new home up to 2 years to sell their old homes before incurring higher taxes. The previous limit had been 6 months. South Korea recorded a trade deficit for the 4th straight month, the first time that's happened since the 2008 global financial crisis. The deficit came to around $4.7 billion. Exports were the highest for July, but that was outweighed by the soaring cost of energy. Shin helps us look beyond the digits.
South Korea's imports in July exceeded exports for a 4th consecutive month. It's the first time there has been such an extended deficit since 2008. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy announced on Monday that the deficit in July came to around $4.7 billion. Exports rose 9.4% on year to almost $61 billion, the highest amount for any month of July, thanks to strong outbound shipments of petroleum products and semiconductors. But imports were even higher. Imports jumped 21.8% to an all-time high of just over $65 billion due to skyrocketing energy prices.
Imports of energy in July rose to an all-time high of $18.5 billion due to soaring energy prices and growing demand for energy in summer, resulting in a trade deficit.
Energy wasn't the only factor behind the deficit. The country imported around $6.7 billion worth of semiconductors, up 25% from an year earlier. Imports of agricultural products rose about 22% to about $2.5 billion, with corn rising the most at 50%. One expert says this is because of a trade structure wherein about 40% of the goods Korea exports are made out of materials imported from other countries. He projects another trade deficit this month, but says it will get smaller toward the end of the year.
In the second half of this year, the trade deficit will decrease because the country's exports usually grow in September and October. But with raw material prices still soaring and global supply chains disrupted, the trade balance is less likely to turn into a surplus.
In the meantime, the government's planning to announce measures this month to help companies better compete overseas with their exports by cutting red tape. 신하영, Arirang News.
The Bank of Korea appears likely to raise interest rates again, this time by 25 basis points as it tries to tackle inflation. The nation's central banker, when questioned by lawmakers in Parliament on Monday, said there will be an appropriate move with higher rates being inevitable to prevent the damage inflation could cause to the broader economy. Lee Chang-yong added inflationary pressure will likely cool down in a few months, as long as there's no major change to overseas factors like oil prices. In June, consumer inflation in South Korea came in at 6%, the highest in decades. That prompted the BOK to raise rates by an unprecedented 50 basis points. The amount of shopping done online here in the nation increased on year in June. According to Statistics Korea, this was mainly due to people paying for travel and leisure activities after distancing measures are lifted. Here's Choi Min-jung with a breakdown of the figures.
More people in South Korea are shopping online on the back of eased virus prevention rules. According to Statistics Korea, the value of online transactions for June stood at 16.8 trillion won, or around $12.8 billion US dollars. That is more than a 10% increase from the same month last year. Purchases of cultural items like concerts and movies more than doubled on year. Transaction values reached over $200 million, the highest since data was first compiled in 2017. Online sales of travel services also more than doubled. Statistics Korea says the increase follows the eased social distancing rules as well as the lifting of mandatory isolation for inbound travelers. More people have also purchased food and beverages online due to its convenience. Most of the online purchases were made through mobile devices like smartphones and tablets. Mobile shopping took up 74% of the total online shopping transactions, jumping more than 3 percentage points. Its transaction value also increased nearly 16% on year to around $9.5 billion. Despite online shopping overall recovering to pre-pandemic levels, direct sales made online to customers overseas dropped almost 60% on year in the second quarter of 2022. Cosmetics were hit hardest. The fall on online sales overseas was mainly on the back of decreased sales of duty-free products. This was due to a large fall in sales to China. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Elsewhere around the world, shelling by Russian forces in and around the Ukrainian city killed the owner of the country's biggest agricultural company, a man President Zelensky called a hero. Meanwhile, the first shipment of grain left the port of Odessa on Monday under a deal brokered by the UN. Yoon has the latest.
Ukraine on Sunday saw what its president called the most brutal shelling of the entire war so far. Specifically in the Mykolaiv region, where most of the country's wheat, barley, and corn is produced.
Ukrainians, in the last 24 hours, Mykolaiv and the region has experienced the most brutal shelling of the entire period of the full-scale war. Dozens of missiles and rockets hit residential buildings, schools, social infrastructure, and industrial facilities.
In one of those strikes, the owner of the country's biggest agricultural company died. President Zelensky paid tribute to him and his wife.
The Russian strike took the lives of Oleksiy Vadatersky and his wife Resa, the founder of one of the largest agricultural companies in Ukraine, Nibolon, a hero of Ukraine. My sincere condolences to the family and friends of the couple. It is exactly such people, such companies, our Ukrainian South, that guaranteed the world's food security.
This happened on the same day the Turkish presidential spokesperson hinted that Ukraine's grain export ships were ready to leave ports for the first time in months. An Ukrainian grain ship left the port of Odessa on Monday. Last week, Russia and Ukraine signed a UN-brokered agreement to ease the food crisis and reduce global grain prices. The agreement allows Ukrainian grain ships to safely pass in and out of ports in the Black Sea. While the food crisis may be about to ease, the humanitarian crisis remains an issue as the war prolongs. Adding to the already existing tensions, Russian President Vladimir Putin on Sunday signed a new naval doctrine to cast the U.S. as the country's main rival. In a new 55-page naval doctrine, Putin said Russia may use its military force to strengthen its own geopolitical position and safety in the Arctic and Black Seas. Yoon, Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories now, farmers in South Korea face a number of issues every summer. This year they have to cope with the monsoon downpours, the subsequent heat wave, and a typhoon. Special measures are required in order to provide adequate drainage and to prevent damage to crops. Jung Eun-ju reports.
Farmers start working on making ditches as soon as the rain stops. They're taking precautionary measures so that the crops will not get flooded when it starts raining again. These days, agricultural workers take extra care to protect crops from unpredictable weather. Farmers also install deep drainage canals in case of water damage and spray disinfectants on the red pepper fields to prevent pests from swarming due to the weather fluctuating between rain and intense heat. If not taken care of in a timely manner, the roots can rot and the stems and leaves can wither.
When there's a heat wave after rain, rice needs to be irrigated to suppress temperature rises and field crops sprinkled with water to control diseases.
In an orchard, if a large amount of moisture suddenly flows in after a drought, the fruit may burst and become damaged. It's therefore important to keep soil moisture levels consistent during the rainy season by covering the ground under the tree with the film. Overgrown branches must be cut so that the flower buds can grow well. Fire blight or bacterium that can infect orchards also spread easily during humid seasons, so orchards must be closely managed.
To let flower buds grow normally, removing overgrown branches or taking measures is advised so the tree gets enough sunlight even on the inside.
If lesions are visible, that means that the pests have already spread, so preliminary monitoring is vital. 정은주, Arirang News.
Ever since the pandemic, awareness of how climate change can affect the world has been rising. To remind a wider audience of its impact in a more accessible way, an exhibition featuring artwork made of plastic waste is now on. Cho Sung-min takes us there.
An exhibition of artwork made from plastic waste is now open to the public in Suwon, a city on the outskirts of the South Korean capital, Seoul. From plastic balls to wrapping, all the materials used are commonly used in our daily lives. 5 artists who came together to work on this exhibition say it's not just the materials they use that are similar, but the message about the environment that they try to convey. For instance, one of the works created by Jung Jae-hee called Eccentric Season is made from a functioning air conditioner, fan, humidifier, and heater. It criticizes the arrogance of humans and their audacity to defy nature and bring extreme changes to the environment.
I hope we can think about things that go unnoticed every day deeply through these displays of excess and irony.
After looking through all the artwork, visitors can participate in a special craft class where they can make all kinds of accessories using small marbles made of compressed plastic waste. One gallery official says the project is meant to help people be more conscientious about climate change, which is now a serious global issue.
I hope people can learn that the environmental issue that's affecting the world since the pandemic era is much closer to us than it seems.
With 38 different pieces of artwork on display, the exhibition will be open until September. Cho Sung-min, Arirang News.
Sweltering temperatures will bake the nation again tomorrow. Tropical nights are expected overnight, with most regions seeing nighttime lows of 25 degrees Celsius or higher. Places like Pohang will be scorching hot for the daytime, with highs hiking up to 33 degrees. With extreme heat combined with increased humidity levels, temperatures will feel hotter than the actual readings. 2 of the typhoons that dissipated today have pushed in a surge of water vapor into the peninsula. This will produce nationwide showers for tomorrow. Parts of Gyeonggi-do province will see up to 100 millimeters. The Seoul metropolitan area, Gangwon-do province, and regions with higher elevations will see about 20 to 70 millimeters. Local downpours are expected for central regions with up to 30 millimeters per hour. Morning lows in Seoul and Daegu will be starting off at 26 degrees. Daily highs in Seoul and Busan will reach 30. Daegu and Gyeongju will be hot at 33 degrees. While most of the rain will taper off tomorrow, parts of central regions will see lingering rain until Wednesday morning. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
Time to wrap things up. As always, thank you for staying with us.